So, when a giant government agency says it cares about something as tricky as racial equity, how do you know if they actually mean it? Is it all just PR, or is there real action behind the words? Well, today we're going to find out. We're going to dig into the public playbook of one of the biggest agencies around, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA. Wow, this quote from actor and activist Danny Glover really it hits you, right? It cuts right to the heart of the problem. It's a powerful reminder that the environment isn't some abstract idea out there. No, it's about the air you breathe, where you live, where your kids play. And for way too long, the health consequences of pollution have hit communities of color the hardest. That, right there, is the core of what we call environmental justice. All right, welcome everyone to our fun little study group for PP 5340, Introduction to Public Policy and Management. What we're digging into today comes straight from our required text, specifically Chapter 7 of Race and Social Equity, a Nervous Area of Government. And that title is just perfect. So let's start with that idea. So, a nervous area of government. What does that even mean? Well, it's a fantastic way to describe topics like race and social equity. The ones that can feel like a political minefield for public agencies. They're tricky to talk about, even harder to actually do something about. But here's the thing. Tackling these issues is absolutely crucial if an agency is going to claim it serves all of the public, not just some of it. The whole argument we're exploring today boils down to one simple but really powerful idea. For an agency's commitment to equity to be real, you have to be able to see it. It's got to be visible. I'm not talking about some memo buried deep in a filing cabinet. No, it has to be right there, out in the open. You should see it in their mission statement, in their top priorities, in the programs they run. Anyone, and I mean anyone, should be able to go to their website and see it plain as day. Okay, so how did the EPA even get to this point? This wasn't something that just happened overnight in a quiet boardroom. Not at all. The real story actually starts outside the agency's walls, with a ton of pressure building from the ground up. You can just see the dominoes fall here, right? It all starts in the 80s with grassroots activism. People just demanding change. That public pressure builds and builds until it leads to political action. Then you have the Congressional Black Caucus stepping in and directly confronting the EPA. And what happens next? That confrontation forces the EPA to create a brand new office. And then, to top it all off, the White House makes it official with a big executive order. It's a classic story, really. Pressure from the outside forcing real change on the inside. So, that's the history. That's how we got here. But how does an agency actually take these new values and bake them into its very DNA? Let's take a look at the EPA's foundational documents. Think of it as their equity blueprint. And boom, here it is. This is a perfect example of that visibility we were just talking about. It's right there in the EPA's core purpose statement. The commitment is totally clear. Check out the words they use. All Americans, enforced fairly, all parts of society. I mean, come on, that language is not an accident. That is a deliberate public signal of what this agency stands for. And it doesn't just stop with a mission statement. That purpose gets translated into actual action by the leadership. Back in 2010, the head of the EPA, Administrator Lisa Jackson, laid out her 7 big priorities. And get this, 3 of them, nearly half, were explicitly about equity. She didn't just say clean up communities. She made sure to add especially in disadvantaged communities. She didn't just talk about environmentalism in general. She specifically called out working for environmental justice. And, leadership priorities are what drive budgets and decide where staff spends their time. So this was a huge, visible commitment. All right. So we've got the mission statement, we've got the buy-in from the top, but what about on the ground? How does all this high-level talk actually turn into action? Well, that brings us to the agency's implementation toolkit. First things first, you need a clear definition. For the EPA, environmental justice is all about 2 things: fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people. And these 2 pieces are so important. Fair treatment basically means that no single group should get stuck with an unfair share of the bad stuff. The pollution and environmental risks. And meaningful involvement? That means people get a real seat at the table. They have a genuine chance to participate in the decisions that are going to affect their homes, their health, their communities. So to put that definition into practice, the EPA launched this huge roadmap called Plan EJ 2014. Now, this wasn't just some little side project. It was a massive, comprehensive strategy that was designed to seep into every single corner of the agency. It touched on the core stuff, like how they write rules and enforce them. It pushed for developing new tools in science and law, and it drove new initiatives across pretty much every program they had. The big goal here? to make environmental justice a factor in literally everything the EPA does. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. Through programs like the Environmental Justice Small Grants, the EPA puts power directly into the hands of local communities. This isn't about Washington, D.C. swooping in and telling people what to do. Not at all. We're talking about the Yakutat Tlingit tribe in Alaska getting funds to research the safety of their own traditional foods. We're talking about community leaders in Buffalo getting the tools to fight for cleaner air from freight trucks, or immigrant farm workers in North Carolina getting training to protect themselves from dangerous pesticides. This is what real community-based action actually looks like. And it's not just about the grants. The EPA has a whole suite of other tools they use. They've got an independent advisory council to get crucial outside perspectives. They have a working group to coordinate with basically the entire federal government on these issues. And they work to keep the conversation going with regular community calls and public blogs. It's a real multi-pronged approach. They're trying to tackle this from all sides. Okay, let's step back and bring this all together. What are the big lessons here from the EPA's playbook? For any public agency out there, what does it really take to make your commitment to equity not just visible, but actually effective? When you look at the EPA's journey, a pretty clear three-part framework pops out. First, you have to acknowledge the context, the history. You can't just pretend this work appeared out of nowhere. Second, it has to permeate the entire agency. The commitment can't just live in one little office in the basement. It's got to be in the mission, it's got to be in the leadership's priorities, and it has to be part of the daily grind. And third, use a bunch of different approaches. There is no one-size-fits-all solution here. You need a mix of internal, external, and collaborative strategies to make it work. And that brings us to a final question, something for you to think about. Take this framework we just walked through and apply it to your own community. Go online, look up your local city government, your county health department, maybe your state's environmental agency. Ask yourself, how visible is their work on equity? What are they telling you, and what are they? Because figuring that out, well, that's the first step to making sure they're accountable to everyone they serve.